It is the year 1720, and the Caribbean sun beats down mercilessly upon the deck of a weathered sloop. The ocean stretches out like a sparkling blue canvas, yet the ship itself is a floating coffin of misery and decay. This is not the romantic adventure portrayed in cinema, but a brutal fight for survival where death hides within every plank and rope. The first assault on the senses is the suffocating stench rising from the vessel's depths. Below deck, the air hangs heavy with the smell of unwashed bodies, rotting wood, and foul bilge water sloshing within the hull. 50 men are packed into a space built for 20, sleeping in hammocks that brush against one another amid a chorus of coughing and snoring. A modern human would likely collapse from the toxic atmosphere alone, as the absence of proper ventilation creates a breeding ground for tuberculosis and typhus. The bilge water forms a noxious stew of waste, dead rats, and leaking cargo, releasing deadly gases capable of suffocating a man in his sleep. To breathe this air is to inhale a slow poison, day after day and night after night. Hunger is the ever-present companion of every sailor, yet the food available is often more revolting than the hunger itself. The staple diet consists of ship's biscuits known as hardtack, which are baked so hard they can break a man's teeth. These biscuits are almost always infested with weevils and maggots, which the sailors eat without hesitation for the extra protein. They tap the biscuit on the table to knock out the largest insects, but the larvae remain baked into the flour. The meat is salted beef or pork that has been cured until it resembles the texture of petrified wood. It is often so old that it glistens with a phosphorescent green decay in the dark. To eat it, the men must carve it with knives like wood and soak it for hours to make it even remotely chewable. Thirst is an even greater enemy, for fresh water turns into a green, slimy sludge within weeks of leaving port. The crew drinks grog, a mixture of water, rum, and lime, not for pleasure, but to kill the algae and bacteria. Scurvy is the silent killer that stalks the ship, caused by the total lack of vitamin C in the diet. It begins with lethargy and spots on the skin, but soon the gums begin to rot and teeth fall out like loose pebbles. Old wounds that had healed years ago suddenly reopen as the body loses its ability to produce collagen. When the food runs out completely, the ship becomes a hunting ground for the thousands of black rats that infest the hold. These rodents are aggressive, often attacking sleeping men and biting off ears or toes in the dark. In times of desperation, the sailors are forced to hunt and eat these disease-ridden creatures to survive. There are documented cases where starvation drives men to madness and the consumption of inedible objects. Men boil their own leather boots or belts for hours, trying to extract some sustenance from the animal hide to fill their aching stomachs. It is a grim feast of despair that offers no nutrition, but merely delays the inevitable death by famine. Sanitation is non-existent, as the only toilet is the head, a simple hole at the bow of the ship exposed to the waves. Using it in a storm is a life-threatening maneuver that has claimed countless lives as men are washed overboard. Most men simply relieve themselves in buckets or corners of the ship, adding to the toxic miasma below deck. Illness or injury on the high seas is usually a death sentence, as there are no qualified doctors on board. The ship's surgeon is often the carpenter or the cook, wielding a saw and a bottle of rum as his only instruments. An amputation is performed on the dining table without anesthesia, the stump cauterized with boiling tar to stop the bleeding. Battle is not a glorious duel of swords, but a chaotic slaughter dominated by heavy artillery. When a cannonball hits the wooden hull, it sends showers of razor-sharp splinters flying through the air like shrapnel. These wooden daggers cause more horrific injuries and deaths than the cannonballs themselves, tearing through flesh and bone. Discipline is maintained through terror, and the punishments are designed to break the spirit as well as the body. Keelhauling is the ultimate nightmare, where a man is dragged by ropes under the barnacle-encrusted hull of the ship. The razor-sharp shells shred the skin from the body, leaving the victim as a raw, bleeding mass if he does not drown first. The captain is not an absolute monarch by divine right, but a leader elected by the crew who can be deposed at any moment. He must constantly prove his strength and cunning to keep his position and his life. Mutiny is a constant threat, a simmering tension that turns friends into murderers over a misinterpreted look or a small share of loot. Days are filled with back-breaking labor, manning the pumps to keep the leaking ship afloat. There is no rest, only the endless cycle of scrubbing the deck, repairing sails, and splicing ropes. Boredom is a psychological poison that leads to fights, gambling disputes, and fatal duels. There is no privacy, no silence, and no escape from the watchful eyes of the crew. Paranoia spreads like a contagion as every man wonders who will be the next to turn against him. To show weakness is to invite aggression.
So one must maintain a facade of toughness at all times. Pirate ship is a totalitarian microcosm where the laws of civilization do not apply. The only law is the Articles of Agreement signed by every man, which dictates the distribution of loot and the penalties for betrayal. To break these rules can mean marooning, being left alone on a desert island with a pistol and a single shot. This fate is often feared more than death, as it promises a slow end by thirst and madness under the blistering sun. The psychological toll of this existence is immense, leading many men to drink themselves into oblivion whenever possible. Alcohol is the only escape from the reality of their lives, a temporary numbness against the pain and the fear. Sleep is a luxury that is rarely granted, as the watch schedule is brutal and unyielding. A sailor might get 4 hours of rest before being kicked awake to climb the rigging in a gale. Exhaustion makes the men clumsy, leading to falls from the masts that end in a broken spine on the deck or a splash in the dark water. There are no safety nets and no harnesses, only a grip of calloused hands on wet, slippery ropes. The ocean is not a friend, but a vast, indifferent monster waiting to swallow the careless. Sharks often trail the ships, drawn by the waste thrown overboard, waiting for a man to slip. The Golden Age of Piracy was, in reality, a short, brutal, and nasty existence. Most pirates did not retire with buried treasure, but died young of disease, hanging, or in a drunken brawl. To survive 3 days requires a stomach of iron and a will of steel that modern man has long forgotten. We romanticize the freedom of the pirate life, but we ignore the cost of that freedom. It was a life bought with blood, lived in filth, and ended in violence. The Jolly Roger flying from the mast was not a symbol of adventure, but a warning of the hell that awaited on board. A modern visitor would not find